webinar. This webinar is a part of P2 Week 2013 with a theme of P2 at the Crossroads. As we look at the connections between energy, the economy, and the environment, it is important to take a look back with some of the pioneers of the pollution prevention field. This webinar will speak as to how the pollution prevention field originated, as well as a discussion on the tools such as P2 and energy efficiency assessments, the emergence of voluntary programs, the growth of networks and partnerships, and the skill sets needed to carry out these programs. We'll conclude the webinar with what success looks like after nearly 30 years and where we go from there. Our speakers today represent some of the best of the field, and will be able to provide firsthand experience and accounts of their work in the pollution prevention field. Cam Metcalf is the Executive Director of the Kentucky Pollution Prevention Center at the University of Louisville and is a national leader in pollution prevention and energy efficiency technical assistance, training, and applied research with a career that spans more than 30 years. Cindy McComas is a co-project manager for the Safer Chemistry Challenge program, a program of NPPR. She is also an adjunct professor in the Department of Bioproducts and Biosystems Engineering at the University of Minnesota. Cindy also served as director of the Minnesota Technical Assistance Program at the University of Minnesota 1985 through 2010. Our other presenter is Gary Hunt, and he is a founding member of the National Pollution Prevention Roundtable and former director of the North Carolina Division of Pollution Prevention and Environmental Assistance. He started as the program's first technical staff member in 1985 and then became director of the program for 21 years. He was also director of P2RX's Southeast Waste Reduction Resource Center, serving EPA Regions 3 and 4. He is currently teaching at North Carolina State University. Just a couple of quick technical remarks before we get started. If you have any questions, please type them into the question box in the GoToWebinar panel, and we'll have some time at the end of the webinar for questions. Gary will be our opening speaker, so Gary, if you'd like to go ahead and begin.
Well, thank you, Kim. My name again is Gary Hunt, and I am one of the pioneers, and I have the arrows in the back to prove it. This is a picture of the Archdale building in North Carolina where North Carolina Department of Environmental and Natural Resources is headquartered, and this is where the first meeting of what would become NPPR was located. The first meeting was in April 1985. I just started there as a technical assistance staff for the North Carolina Pollution Prevention PAYS program, and I was for about 3 months. We decided that we really needed to bring people together and talk about other similar programs that are being set up across the country. So we got a little bit of money, and we brought together states. There was also representatives from EPA, and who was working on the Congressional report on waste minimization. Though we did have to pay or travel. There was about a dozen people from 8 states, EPA, and DOD there. Though the first meeting is somewhat like Woodstock, everybody claims to have been there. We could never fit everybody in the room. At that meeting, we also introduced our northern visitors to North Carolina barbecue, overcooked vegetables, and sweet tea, thus setting the trend for the future NPPR meetings. Food is a key ingredient to those. After this meeting, my boss, Roger Schechter, worked with EPA and other state programs to have the next meeting in D.C. the following fall. This is the first meeting of the newly formed Roundtable of State Pollution Prevention, of State Waste Minimization Programs, and the rest is history. Next slide, please. This is our logo, which my boss typed up. The Roundtable became the go-to organization for anything dealing with waste minimization and pollution prevention. The group was involved in both. Next slide, please. The group was involved in both the report to Congress on waste minimization and Congress's Office of Technology Assistance report, Serious Waste Reduction, which is rebuttal, was a critical response to EPA's report. Roger Schechter, representing the Roundtable, also testified to Congress in 1989 on the proposed Hazardous Waste Reduction Act, which became the P2 Act of 1990. Next slide. The Roundtable became a point of contact for information exchange and training on P2. Here I am. Here's a slide from my first presentation, the fall 1985 meeting, on how to set up a P2 program. You notice there's no technology back then. It was lots of fun. Meeting was held twice a year, and the organization underwent rapid growth. Though it was not all fun, I still remember those unending discussions about the definition of P2. It looks so trivial today, but we really were a maturing organization. Next slide. By 1990 or so, the programs had moved beyond just hazardous waste, which really started the whole thing. It was beginning an accepted multimedia environmental strategy. So the roundtable changed its name to represent the broader issues. It became National Pollution Prevention Roundtable and addressed P2 in all media and types of pollutants. Next slide. Over the years, the P2 approach has really shifted. It really started out with audits, manuals, checklists, doing the P2 audits, waste minimization work, waste reduction. EPA's famous waste minimization opportunity assessment manual, known as the Purple Manual, which became the Facility Pollution Prevention Guide, the TAN manual, are real good examples of this. We're really focused at that time on processes within the facility. With the growth of such national efforts as the toxic use reduction planning and similar requirements in a growing number of states in the late 1980s and early 1990s, a more holistic facility planning approach started to take hold. Total Quality Environmental Management even had about 15 minutes of fame back in the early 90s. By the middle of the 1990s, states were seeing that approaching a facility project by project was not really working. It was too labor intensive, and also we're finding that projects just were not sustainable. Champions would leave. It was only one project. It was the plant did not take in other areas. So a number of states started to focus on the emerging ISO 14000 EMS approach. The states of the multi-state working group with EPA funding started to look at how best to make EMS as part of an agency's environmental protection mandate. The research done at UNC's University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill and other projects across the country, it was shown that compliance can be improved by using EMSs and how it could be used by state agencies. Working together, states began developing environmental excellence or environmental stewardship programs that helped and rewarded organizations and companies and organizations and local governments and such that implemented an ISO 14001 based EMS. At the time, EPA also rolled out the National Performance Track program based on developing EMS. Many of these programs also link together the whole idea of regulatory flexibility. The EPA even updated the P2 guide to cover both auditing and EMS approaches done by CAM. It's a great manual, still one of the best things out there. Next slide. As this was a fundamental, as at about this time, there's really a fundamental change in P2. P2 was going away from just talking about protecting the environment into a way to improve business and operation. It was really just P2 pays. It was just really the same thing, but it changed the tone. But when it began to be embraced by business community and talked about in terms they understood, things changed. It is now driven by a business that which has a completely different set of drivers than environmental protection. P2 has really become mainstream, but now one of the thoughts about behind EMS, is just kind of sidelight, was how to identify the good guys from the bad guys. It was always a way to move the regulated community beyond compliance and towards sustainability. And if we can get them out of the compliance, beyond compliance, we wouldn't really have to worry about them anymore. P2 programs, environmental groups, and the EPA. Even today, almost 28 years since I started working for the Pollution Prevention Program, I still can walk the facility and find that a P2 audit is still the basic way to start a sustainability program. That's it. On to you, Cindy. Or Cam, I guess.
Yes, let me show my screen thing. Okay. The main thing that I'd start with today is to tell you all to stay focused on the task. And that task is what you work up with your client, what are their interests, and make sure that you stay on target with that task. As Gary had mentioned, our first before the Pollution Prevention Act of '90 was waste minimization. And again, it was focused on the hazardous waste, and it reached down as you signed your manifest for shipping hazardous waste to small quantity generators. And basically they said they would have a program in place that they had determined to be economically practicable. And that's where a lot of our work started, and you did have to show the cost benefits to any project. And recently I went online to EPA.gov, and the last bullet there, if you will, innovative and effective approaches to waste min include lean manufacturing, energy recovery, the EMSs, and green chemistry. So you jump back into the 80s when this was all getting off the ground, and here we are looking at the things that we're all working in today. In '92, after the P2 Act of '90, we had a policy memo that came out from EPA, and basically what this did was open up those non-regulated cost centers that we were bumping into during P2 assessments, the water, the energy, those type of things. And so we were able to begin to look at resource management totally in the picture. Excuse me. Next. Okay. And basically, as we all know, P2 is multimedia. We used to see these slides. This is one I've had since I think '88, and time was in there. You begin to see that productivity. And as we were looking at maybe saving a company $75,000 in hazardous waste, they had improved their productivity and were making an additional $300,000 on that. So we began to look at that in energy efficiency, and as you know, this is now kind of what we're seeing with E3, economy, energy, and the environment. I'll throw in here again as those hazardous and non-hazardous waste, a lot of materials exchanges grew out of that. We had the Kentucky Industrial Materials Exchange. It was somewhat passive. We had available and wanted materials. We tried to hook people up, but really, eventually, we only had 26 materials listed after a number of years, and we decided to do away with it. But one of your best out there, of course, is in Florida, and they're very hands-on. They hook people up. They try different products out of the waste, and certainly materials exchanges were an era and probably still have a place. How did we track this? The process mapping, you know, you walk into a new facility, they know it better than you, and basically by walking through from receiving to shipping, there's a lot of things you didn't see. So Bob Pajasic, who wrote with me the organizational guide to P2, was really into hierarchical process maps. And basically when we would walk into a client and you were trying to calibrate, yeah, they might have a design like you're looking at here. Hard to tell what it was, and what we would begin to do is say, what are the main processes? And we began to color code, and what you would come up with is basically on level 1, they were cleaning, they were doing a conversion coating, and they were painting the parts. And then you begin to use the hierarchical. As you looked at cleaning, in the second level, there was a pre-rinse, an alkaline clean, and a post-rinse. And then you said, what's happening in the post-rinse, for instance, to go to that level 3. And as you looked at level 3, you begin to say, here is the capacity in gallons of tanks. Are they heated or not? If it is a halo spray rinse, as you see there, what is, and I see here it was 1 gallon per minute. I still walk into places that are probably rinsing at 20 gallons a minute, and I think we all know 2 gallons per minute is plenty good. So now you had your process steps, and you had broken these apart, and you begin to look at the input-output map, if you will, where you had your non-product resources going in, and that might be heat, water, those type of things, and you begin to look at those non-product resource losses. And the key here, besides the material balance, was to begin to get those costs associated with those. The program in place, I kind of want to shift into a systems approach. And back in '89, the EPA did provide the 6 elements of a program in place. And as you look at these, I think you'll see that these still carry forward into many of the things ISO and things we're using today, of top management support and characterizing your waste, do your assessments, cost allocation system, the tech transfer part of it, and then implement your action plans and conduct your evaluation. And listen, if you look back at some of the old papers written by EPA, these are described, and I think you would find it very interesting that they had done quite a job. Obviously, we jumped into ISO 14. 5 major elements as you look at it here, and again, I think there were 17 elements in ISO 14, kind of doing the plan, do, check, act, or I like to say adapt. And that was the next iteration, if you will, of looking at this. In 2000, KPPC began to do energy efficiency assessments. And when we did that, we looked over at Energy Star, and they had a 7-step energy management process that as you look at this, you had your commitment, again, kind of top management support, the monitoring, measuring, develop your baseline, do your assessment, and again, in developing that a baseline, whether it's a solid waste program, a water program, etc., all you need to do is take in the red and replace that with water usage and cost, wastewater treatment, disposal cost, etc. The rest of it is really management, setting your goals, putting an action plan together, implementing that action plan, evaluating your progress, and recognize achievements. So again, you're seeing the same things in all of these systems, and I think what we did at KPPC was basically dummy it down to very simple, because the people that did ISO 14 were the bigs and did it and went on down that road and are still doing it, but many companies didn't want that formal of a documented system and so forth. Now, what I'll tell you is we build our recognition programs for implementing those steps to put that system in place. Only in the 3-star there, when you get your 3rd star, we have included, you must include a 2.5% per year minimum goal for energy intensity reduction. But this is a great program, whether it's at the company level or we run the Kentucky Save Energy Now program, and companies sign up and we lead them through this. And the energy reduction, the cost savings will come as you do this. There we go. Now, organizational capability, I kind of want to talk about measurements at this point. And in looking at this graph, on the left side are what we all know as activities, behaviors, and outcomes. And basically, as we worked with companies, we began to see that the behavior part of this was very important. In fact, if you didn't really have that top-level commitment, you weren't really, the grassroots bottom-up didn't work. So a policy, a team, and a team leader were a very big gap. And in fact, we began in our pre-assessment questionnaires to ask that, and if they didn't have that, we weren't going to go out and spend a lot of our time, because our assessments are free, confidential, and non-regulatory, with a company that wasn't willing to at least begin to put this type of system in place. And again, it was key. And the behavioral changes we look for are how many staff have you trained in pollution prevention? How, do you have regular meetings of the team, and have you got agendas for those? What part of the team are looking at the technologies, feasibility, and cost of the opportunities that you've identified? So there really has to be that behavioral change to move P2 into your culture, your management systems, and your business planning. And again, reactive to proactive is very important here. We know that normally when we come in there, it may have been initially for a notice of violation. They're being very reactive, and eventually we try and move them over to the proactive side. What are the skills that you need? I got to tell you, I got ISO 9000 certified lead auditor back in '92 just to begin to look at corrective actions and preventive actions. Went on and eventually at KPPC we had 7 of our staff of 14 staff members at the time were ISO 14 lead auditors. All of my engineers that are due energy, we send them and they're certified energy managers from AEE. Recently, I'm going to say 6 months ago, we had a trainer come in and train us on the green, and 11 of my folks went through that. The green manufacturing specialist out of Purdue's technical assistance program. And on this slide, I've just got some of the things as we're all looking at green chemistry, toxics, use reduction, and that sort of thing. What are some of the skills we need now as we're looking at this? Certainly back in '98, Design for the Environment came out, but we all know that wasn't a good enough driver to mess with their input chemicals and stuff. We really had to get to the sustainability times, and now we're really beginning to see this kick in. So what are those skills you need? You need to continually move your skills up. Trying to get my, okay. Pioneers for Natural Capitalism. This is a wonderful saying. Amory Lovins, Hunter Lovins, Paul Hawken in '99. This made a really big impact, and I've always used this as I talk with my clients. As this sentence is really 4 major things. Business strategies built around, and those business strategies are these systems approaches, the radically more productive use of natural resources can solve many environmental problems at a profit. And this is key, and that's what you want to go in and working with the client, bring them to this point that this begins to make sense to them. Gary mentioned, and I've mentioned, the Organizational Guide to Pollution Prevention, a book that Bob and I did for EPA back in, I think, 2001 or 2. We do have this on our website, I believe, kppc.org. Also, we have copies, I don't know if you could stand this or not, but with tapes of a 3-day workshop that Bob and I would do going through this manual. Some of these concepts, the tools we've talked about are in the first chapters, and implementation, for instance, I wrote chapter 6 on implementing P2 through an ISO 14001 system. Bob did chapter 7 on the Malcolm Baldrige Award, kind of using the quality system to build a P2 program. So we do have some of those available if you'd like to get on our website or give us a call. I'll throw it back to you, Kim.
All right, Cindy, if you'd like to continue.
Yes. Can you hear me, Kim?
Yes.
Can you hear me, Kim?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, so this is Cindy McComas, and I wanted to pick up on what Cam and Gary both talked about related to site visits. We quickly found that, well, we knew site visits were effective ways to identify pollution prevention opportunities. And so we quickly found that we needed more people in the plants, and student interns became a natural extension of our pollution prevention program staff. Many of the technical assistance programs were located at universities, not all, but even if your program wasn't located at a university, it could access easily the university resources and students. So it was quite easy to use students, and it was a great training and experience opportunity for them, especially related to the engineering students. So with the site visits, the staff could identify pollution prevention opportunities, but with the summer intern programs, they were actually able to, in most cases, implement the projects. And that was a great opportunity to show what we could do with pollution prevention, to measure those results, and to be able to report on them and use that as a way to develop case studies and get others interested in pollution prevention. MNTAP's summer intern program began in 1985. We think it may have been one of the earliest summer intern programs, and it was a kickoff for many student intern programs across the country that are now very common as a key way to operate technical assistance programs. And of course, MNTAP continues to this day with the great staff at the MNTAP program. But then we also knew that with the student intern programs, that led to partnerships. And we increased our need to seek partnerships because we felt like it would enhance opportunities for the business customer. So we realized we couldn't do pollution prevention in isolation at the company. The company was relying on a variety of resources. There are many parts of the business, and that got into we needed to seek credible partners. So one of our earliest partners were the small business development centers, the SBDCs, and they were naturally working with small businesses, and they were a great entree or entry point for us into many small businesses in the very early days. Also industry associations, working with different sectors, business sectors, putting on events, especially during the days of technology diffusion when we put on technology demos. These were all very important aspects of the program. Go to the next slide, please, Kim. And utilities, they became very key for us, and I think a lot of programs when we got into the energy efficiency areas that Cam described, because many utilities were interested in getting companies to move forward and utilize their rebate programs, their marketing programs, and achieve energy efficiency. So we really got the utilities on board to help, actually in many ways, co-fund utilities, and I think this is happening throughout the technical assistance programs. Not to diminish the need for the manufacturing extension partnerships. We began to work with companies on lean manufacturing and green, and some of the diagrams that Cam put up. So MEPs became a very critical partner with us in a number of ways. Of course, other partners included Performance Tracks, the State Energy Office, and Workforce Development. And the final reason for the partnerships that we formed were that many of the federal grant RFPs required committed partnerships rather than just simply saying that they would be supportive of activities. They had to actually play a significant formal role in the projects that we implemented. The next slide. There were also many voluntary programs that came out early on that were primarily a result of EPA initiatives, and the EPA grant programs also served a very critical role for us. The pollution prevention grant and the source reduction programs became, in many ways, base money for supporting pollution prevention programs, along with whatever state support that states had. And even though the states never really, unfortunately, achieved the full amount that was designated to the P2 programs under the Federal Pollution Prevention Act, we felt, everyone seemed to feel that the distribution was fair. It was accomplished through the regional offices, and it helped us to develop some good working relationships with our regional pollution prevention coordinators. And for that, we've all been very thankful. The money that was provided by EPA was important for initiating not only new sector and technical assistance approaches, but also to carry on day-to-day activities of site visits and intern programs. But these voluntary programs that you see up on the slide were oftentimes challenge programs meant to engage business and industry and set them on a path toward reduction. Some of the earliest ones you may recall, 3350 based on the TRI emissions and that list of chemicals. Project Excel, which had to do with permitting and kind of going beyond compliance. The Environmental Technology Verification Program through ORD. Those were all very useful and helpful initiatives. Then came along WasteWise at EPA, and then there were some state-based WasteWise programs. We've mentioned Design for the Environment, the Green Suppliers Program, and we know what a critical role that the supply chain work plays in overall pollution prevention and waste reduction. NPAP program, Climate Leaders, Smart Way Transport, so many other programs that exist now and have been useful for engaging business and providing leadership in these reduction programs. They also brought the potential for recognition of achievements by state awards programs and the National Pollution Prevention Roundtable's MVP2 program, Most Valuable P2 program. And this being P2 week, the awards have been given out for the MVP2 awardees. So congratulations to all of those folks who are recipients. And then finally, NPPR's Safer Chemistry Challenge program started in 2011. On the next slide, you can see the basic premise that we have for the Safer Chemistry Challenge program, which the goal being to engage industry in moving toward safer chemicals, and this is one of the very important pathways that pollution prevention has gone down in recent years. So we've been successful in identifying and recruiting some companies to this Safer Chemistry Challenge program. And so I'll wrap up with just a few comments. What we'd like to do is move on to talk about what we think is coming next. It's kind of like William Riley wrote that article so many years ago when I think it was back in 1991, about pollution prevention, and it was a new strategy for EPA. And that was 20 plus years ago, and now to look ahead 20 years is always kind of interesting to see where we're going and what success will look like for the future. But we certainly know that all of the programs that we've worked on, and you'll see these, you know that these have all been mentioned, are leading towards sustainability, and that's been our overall umbrella. But we also do know that, as Gary mentioned earlier, pollution prevention is still very fundamental to sustainability and is a very much a plank in the overall sustainability home, if you will. So a couple of observations on my part in terms of what's happened in the last few years and then where we're going is one of the things that I've been especially gratified in seeing is that environmental criteria have become product performance criteria for many companies. So they're no longer separated. They're no longer evaluated or valued separate tower or by just the environmental group in that company. They're now integrated fully into product design and into product development as in many companies, not all, but in many companies. And then green chemistry is an interesting area, having worked with it for the last couple of years for me, going sort of from the macro level to the micro level. That's been a great fundamental piece about related to product substitution, as we've talked about for many years. And finally, my last observation is that those of us on this call have moved from being a practitioner, although we still practice that to some extent, to the classroom. So we've gone from the field to the classroom and brought our field experiences with us to teach students these days about pollution prevention. And it's kind of amazing to do that and turn on some lights and some minds and get them involved in thinking about problem solving that is different than the way it used to be, not pollution control, but looking proactively at problems and not reacting to them, but being proactive about them. So we've all become involved in teaching in one way or another, and so it goes on to the next generation. And I'll end there, and Gary and Cam will have some comments, and then we'll open it up for questions.
Thanks, Cindy. I had to unmute my mic. Just a few general thoughts.
Gary or
Now,
Cam?
we've come a long way since I started working this field over 30 years ago. But I thought a really interesting observation was a couple years ago I saw 2 carpet firms that were trying to convince our department secretary that one was more sustainable than the other. And I thought, I just sat there and just was totally amazed that here were 2 major corporations trying to argue over who was doing it better. You would never have seen that just a few years before. It's pretty amazing. And all those years ago, when we used to talk about P2, we all kind of thought that we'd be out of a job by now, though most of us are retired. So, but it was a bit idealistic. But what's really happened, we're seeing companies embrace pollution prevention, which has now kind of become sustainability. It's become part of the way they do business, at least a lot of the major ones. We're seeing it spread with the whole effort of greening the supplier chain. I think we're seeing it now spread around the world in other countries, third world countries, where they're doing a lot of manufacturing. A lot of the thoughts and ideas of reduction in P2 are get going there. And I kind of see too as there's more thought about design for the environment type things, looking at the toxic chemicals, the green screen and things, looking at green chemistry, looking at how to make these products a little better, a little greener. So I'm very optimistic of where we're going, and it's kind of fun to look back and see where we come from. When I started this business, we had rivers catching on fire to where we're going. So it's still going to be a great ride. Cam, you have some thoughts?
I'd kick in there, and basically I'd hit one of Cindy's first points was about students. And here at the University of Louisville, we are in the Speed School of Engineering, and we have our engineering students have to do 3 full-time semesters of work out in an industry. And so KPPC in its role has been able to have co-op students come in, bring what they've learned in the classroom, because they normally start in their sophomore or junior years, bring that to the field, and we send them out with our engineers on assessments. And then I think what's important as I look at the mission of a university, education, research, and community service, we see the opportunity after our student co-ops have been in the field of taking that back and beginning to look at the education component maybe a little differently. Certainly the research area, they bump into things where industry has hit the wall with opportunities, and there are new ways of things that could be done through research and that type of thing. We've actually hired students from our engineering school to be engineers here, and have encouraged them. A couple of our students we hired, we encouraged them to get their master's in engineering and let them work 80% time for 2 years in order for them to accomplish that. So, you know, you're training them, and hopefully you can take advantage of that and hire some of them in to work with us. So that is a very important thing. Again, much as Cindy and Gary are teaching, we have the opportunity for myself and our engineers to go and teach in classes that are built around green building courses, sustainability courses, We were talking a little earlier before we got online with y'all about some of the games that were developed, in fact, by Minnesota Technical Assistance Program, I believe, in '89. The Play-Doh Fun Factory. There was a paint exercise put together. So those type of adult hands-on learning tools work, and I mean they still work with CEOs of companies or a new energy team or waste team, green team in a company. So I feel like that again, being able to pass on those things through coursework and get some new research and thinking going has really been a good thing.
All right, well, thank you to Gary, Kim, and Cindy for some great presentations today. We'll now move on to the Q&A session, and I want to encourage everyone to continue submitting questions in that question panel on the GoTo screen. Our first question, though, is what are the characteristics and capacities of an organization that can adapt and evolve their P2 client services to survive in the near and far future? So I think that's something you all can speak to. So Gary, do you want to comment on that first?
I got to think about that one for a while.
Well, let me jump in. I'll say that as we look at the characteristics, again, we tie it to client needs, and you are seeing the energy costs rising, so you know that your clients are going to come to you for help with that big cost center. Again, we've talked green chemistry, those type of things, systems approaches. When we talk ISO 14, are we ready to do ISO 50,000, the energy management system? And I had sent 3 of my staff to get their ISO 50 lead auditor training and their provisional auditors in that. So those things are always going to be happening. As I look at capacity, E3, for instance, we're not necessarily going to get into lean review part of it because you have your MEPs that are heavily vested in that. We have our community and technical colleges. 10 of those 16 actually do lean training and lean reviews and the value stream mapping of current and future state. So when I look at capacities, I really think about partners. KPPC is leading the E3 initiative in Kentucky, and we've gathered all of the community colleges, the SBDCs, the MEP, all of those in our state level group, and then when we do get to the assessments and have done those, we're usually then at the local stakeholder group. So your local community college can take over from here in the lean or the MEP, et cetera. So the characteristics will be laid out to us by the needs of our clients, of what our programs need to be, and the capacities or capabilities probably will be addressed because we can't be a be-all, end-all by partners that we hook into.
That's good. The only thing I think I would add to that is that really it's all a team approach, and P2, particularly in a assistance organization, it's all about active teams that work very closely together, but are also very people-oriented, can work with their clients, and particularly people on the floor one-on-one that can relate to the people actually generating the waste, which I think is very, very important when you're working on anything on a P2.
This is Cindy. I was thinking that over the years we've been very successful at new tools that are like calculators, greenhouse gas emission calculators, those sorts of things, to provide those services to clients. I think with the green chemistry and safer chemistry area, there's also many tools out there, so they're fairly technically and chemistry oriented, but I think it would be a good idea if P2 programs learned how to use some of those tools and can provide those services to their clients.
Okay, great. Another question. Has the P2 technical assistance network shifted its resources to address climate change? Danny, if you want to speak on that first, I know it helps to have a little time to think about it.
Well, I can kind of jump in there a little bit because I think both Cindy and Cam and our group in North Carolina, energy conservation really became a very big piece of what we were doing. So we were addressing a lot of just beyond just the chemical work, but actually into the energy conservation, which is really one of the issues in greenhouse gases. So I think that that part of it as a part of your service to your clients is really key. What do you think, Cam?
Yes, and again, you know, the whole makeup of, for instance, Kentucky being a coal state, and 93% of our energy is generated by coal. We also are the third largest coal mining state in the country, and even real, and yet, and so we come from the standpoint, whether it's real or not, there is a bottom line here, and many companies are beginning to get on scorecards, international scorecards even, that are looking at your greenhouse gas reductions and that sort of thing. So then they are coming to you and saying, how do I reduce my carbon footprints? We began to get a whole lot of questions about renewable energy at plants, and I mean even to the point of, do we have enough wind to put a wind turbine on our up on the fourth floor of our factory? Those type of things. So climate change is there. I think it's a driver, but again, that's a huge cost center, and as we see EPA and the regs on utilities and stuff coming out, in fact some tomorrow, we're gonna, the prices are gonna go up, and again in Kentucky, many times the price of energy has been so low it's hard to have a good payback, and it was hard to get people to move in that direction. But I think climate change is beginning to turn them. I think the sustainability component that's come about is beginning to turn that around, and we're seeing a lot of movement.
Yeah, I would agree with that, and I would say the answer that many technical assistance programs have always given to CO2 emissions or other greenhouse gases has been energy efficiency, renewable energy, as Cam said, and also just a bio-based economy to move toward that, and that has been true with many of the product substitutes that have been made. Anytime that there's energy efficiency, it's quite easy to calculate the CO2 savings or reductions as a result of that. So that's always a good thing to make companies more aware.
Okay, great. Moving on to the next question. What do you feel about the importance of product stewardship on the consumer end?
Well, you know, I've always kind of had a problem because you have people that are assemblers, and then you have their supply chain, and you know, we've got big companies that really just assemble the things, and they've got the green, I'm green this, I'm green that, I don't use that kind of chemical, and so forth and so on. And that always kind of upsets me as we begin to go down and or have worked with their tier 1, 2, 3, or 4 suppliers, and they may not be as green and be able to hold up, you know, the awards and that sort of thing. So I'm well, that's me, and I'll just leave it at that. But I sometimes feel like people are taking credit when they're not even using those things, their suppliers are. And that's why it's critical for greening of the supply chain. Now, was that a tangent or what? I don't know.
Well, I think the product stewardship actually is kind of an important component of all this. It's a difficult one. You're seeing in the carpet industry a lot of work going on with take-backs. You're seeing some movement towards providing a service versus a product. which hasn't gone very far. And I think that a lot of consumers are stuck with things they really don't know what to do with. If we could figure out some way, maybe not get it back to the manufacturer, but at least have a way to better handle that and get it back to be recycled, for example. I think right now everybody's, this probably is going biggest right now in the United States in electronics and computers particularly, and old TVs and CRTs, how to handle that and manage that. It's really tough to do. But I think it'd be nice at some point we kind of figure it out as we do the life cycle analysis of the product. We've got to figure out what to do at the end of its life.
Yeah, and I think that's been a big awareness-raising effort for industry to have product stewardship going side by side with pollution prevention has helped industries realize that they are responsible for the products that they produce and that they have to look at their end of life and consider those, and then certainly consumer demand has played a large role in that.
Great. Next question. How do you keep your finger on the pulse of client needs? Any best practice ideas for hearing the voice of the customer?
Well, I think you kind of do a customer diagnosis, and in that you say, what is fulfillment? What do you want for fulfillment? And begin to get to that. Is it bottom line? Is it the community? How you live in the community? Is it worker safety? Those where are the risks and that sort of thing. When you really begin to hone in is on expectations. What do you expect? And that's where you begin to see the dissatisfiers. If they've got a supplier sending them a blue widget, the fulfillment's the blue widget, but they didn't know it was going to be in styrofoam in a box, shrink wrapped onto a pallet, and by the time they get that little blue widget, they've got a dumpster full of stuff and pallets to return and that sort of thing. And then I think it's important, the third part of it is how could you exceed expectations? Do you want to have a green product label? Do you want to be green chemistry? Receive awards and national recognition, state recognition, etc. So it's kind of a combination of those things to really find out what your client maybe really wants, and that's how we would begin to look at it. Of course, when energy prices jump 6% or 8%, all of a sudden you're getting calls about, energy and help with the energy. When a new regulation, look at the boiler MAC that's coming out. Well, that's an OSHA thing to prevent heart attacks in an environmental regulation that requires a tune-up and operation and maintenance controls for how you fix it, and that's energy. So in those kind of things, I think that's where you go. You begin to hone in on what their latest crisis is and they need help in.
One of the things I think is important, as I think Cam kind of mentioned, is knowing new rules and regs that are coming out particularly. But also, I've kind of always found a lot of times your clients don't know what the problem is, or they don't know what they really need, which is always more just on a one-on-one discussion or getting to know them well, getting to understand what their problems are and issues are. Not a lot of time to do it, just some communication to find out really what they need, and then also, again, manage their expectations, because this can be a long road.
I think that's been covered. I don't have anything more to say, Kim.
Okay, great. Next question. What are the biggest threats to an effective national P2 program?
Well, I can say one thing, cash. There's been a number of state programs the last couple of years, including North Carolina's, which has either taken huge hits or actually been zeroed out. So the community is much smaller. At EPA, their money is going away, and the P2 program is kind of being combined with other issues. So it's really that's kind of what the biggest threat is right now, I think, is a cutting back on funding environmental programs, period. P2 has a tendency to be one of the first ones cut since it's not regulatory, unfortunately.
Yeah, and related to that, kind of what you said earlier, Gary, and that's that the lack of realization that pollution prevention is just such a fundamental piece of the other programs that exist out there, whether it's sustainability or safer chemistry or chemicals of concern. It's the first approach. It's all the same principles that need to be practiced. So the language changes, but the activities don't necessarily change.
And sustainability is a core value. It's a strategy. It's not necessarily the program.
No,
and P2 is the program. Environmental management systems are the operational tools that get you there. And I often look at it as sustainability is the blueprint, the way that you get things done, your specifications and stuff are through the management systems. The best tools to use are P2 and E2, and your foundation is compliance. So a lot of time, and listen, sustainability, our IT folks here have been looking at it, and it's dying as a trend, just like P2 died as a trend, and you can go through these things, and that's looking at Google's analytics. So, I've had people say to me, can we go a month without saying sustainability and begin to find out what's next and get on down into the future, because people are getting tired of that. So the key is P2 is an operational tool.
We just need to go back to P2, Cam.
Yep.
Back to the fundamentals.
All right, we've got time. We'll take two more questions really quickly. Any thoughts on how best to partner with utilities, many of which are now heavily invested in energy conservation services?
I'll start on that one. I don't know how much Cam and Gary's programs partnered with utilities, but I know MnTAP started this about 5 years ago, and it was a huge opportunity to get the attention of businesses, to offer rebate programs, to work with a large partner like in our area, Xcel Energy, to move some of these projects forward, to provide them an incentive, a motivator for implementing projects. And it was just really simply a matter of sitting down and meeting with the marketing folks who were responsible for the energy conservation programs, and finding and then drilling that down to the energy assistance providers that, and then actually going on site with those energy assistance providers and then using each other's strengths on site. And then certainly, of course, we during those years, we couldn't deny that the infusion of the energy efficiency money through the early Obama years with ERA programs was really critical to funding many of those activities, and still is. But I would say still partnering with utilities is a very open opportunity.
This is Gary Hunt. I completely agree with Cindy. We did the same thing. We partnered with Duke in Progress, now just Duke because they bought Progress, but worked with, they had a group that helped their industrial customers reduce their energy use, but they didn't know how to get to small and medium businesses. We did. So we worked with them. They provided some money and have provided money over the years just for the program, or to our Retired Engineers program, which we use, to go out there and really help their people get the information down, because they wanted the small businesses to start using their incentive programs to put technologies in place. So it was really a win-win. And they were very, very welcome. Once you find the right person, they're very welcome to work with us.
And those demand-side management programs that are aimed at residential, commercial, and industrial, our problem has been, and we certainly got involved in commercial in Kentucky, the industrial groups basically opted out of DSM because they said, oh no, we're doing energy efficiency, it's a bottom line, and we're not going to pay into or pay a fee that you're going to spread our money out to other people who aren't willing to do it. So we in fact have a hearing with our Public Service Commission November 6th to put before them the fact that, and again, as Gary said, the small and mediums need help. Do we go to less than 5 megawatts and work with that group with the demand-side management program? But in working with the large ones, again, we've seen as much as 27% reduction in the first 2 years of them implementing the 7-step process. So they're not there, although they'll tell you they are, but that's been kind of a problem. But we do work with all the utilities here, and they're beginning to approach us and say, we'd like to use your energy program throughout our distribution area.
And I should add the state energy offices are another great staff to approach because they know the utilities well and who's easy to work with and oftentimes have some money to put out some pilot projects.
Yeah, this is Gary Hunt. I want to second that. The State Energy Office was the partner that really got us in. Great people to work with.
And our state energy program also great. And during the ARA stage, they gave us actually $7.8 million. KPPC grew to 42 staff members, and we did some amazing work for 29 months. Unfortunately, that money went away, but we are in a new grant proposal with them on combined heat and power. That's a coming thing. So yes, it's those state energy programs and utilities tuning up a little bit are beginning to be very positive.
Just to make my own pitch on this, we've been talking about energy and other things. I think a big opportunity in the future again is going to be water. It keeps coming back, and I think that's going to be a tougher one to crack than the energy one. But drought can concentrate minds.
Yes, and I think, Gary, the big problem there is the price of water and the true cost of water. We see it come in at 4 or 5 cents, you know, and going out when you've done it, run it, treated it, and added the chemicals, it's 55 cents a gallon or something. So I think that cheap price, again, is the thing that's maybe holding us back. When we really get a company to look at the true cost of what it is, bingo, they're ready to work on it.
Yes.
And Kim, I just wanted to correct my email on the slide that's up now. It's MCCOM. 2 C's.
Sorry about that.
No problem.
Okay, well, one last question, and on a fun note from the audience. How did you guys get so old while remaining so committed?
Good question.
There was a point in my life I said, I want to save the Mother Earth, and this is the way I decided to do it, and working in university programs has certainly been an exciting way to do it, and I guess to me it was kind of a personal commitment to something, and how can you do that? I started at EPA headquarters writing RCRA 74 to 76, and I decided I couldn't work in a bureaucracy. I really needed to get outside of the Beltway and get down where the companies were doing it, and commit to doing as much as you could for the Mother Earth.
I think it's been it's helping. It's such a positive thing to do it. It's really uplifting versus the regulatory piece is hard. And it's also the pollution prevention community is wonderful. Great people, great vision, real innovators. And it's just been a fun ride.
All right, well, thanks to everyone for attending the webinar. The slides and recording will be posted on our website at p2.org sometime in the next week. And thank you for attending.
Thank you all.
Thanks.
Thank you all.